Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated, first on 93 WIBC. Good to be with you. We have quite a bit of news to dive into, including the first up, the Supreme Court of the United States entered an order today allowing the construction of President Trump's White House ballroom to continue while the Supreme Court further considers the Trump administration's appeal. Now, at maybe the first take, this doesn't appear to be the most exciting news, but the order is written by Chief Justice John Roberts, and the language in the bill suggests something rather, let's say, impactful on this and also on future Supreme Court decisions that are going to matter very much to the midterms, like with the United States Postal Service. So first of all, what in the earth am I talking about here? Babbling like a Hoosier on too much coffee. Well, the Supreme Court of the United States via Justice John Roberts said, quote, upon consideration of the application of counsel for the applicants, the response, and the reply filed thereto, which just means I've read everything, it is ordered that the preliminary injunction entered on April 16th, in which the District Court of D.C. said stop building the White House, is hereby stayed. Meaning like Chief Justice Boasberg, or head judge of the D.C. District Court, who said, hey, you need to stop building that east wing of the White House that you knocked down. The Supreme Court has said, he can keep building it for now. And we're going to be looking over some stuff. Normally, the Supreme Court doesn't issue these kind of stays. And after all, the Trump administration has been asking them for a week to kind of step in and weigh in on these kinds of matters because it's 65% built now. Katie Pavlich over at News Nation, a good friend, was talking about some of this a little bit earlier today. She said that the 65% building status, again, all of the underground bunker stuff, a lot of the walls, if you see some of the photos, and it's hard to get because there really aren't a lot of public photos of this, they're just very zoomed out shots that make the whole area look like a mess, like all construction sites often do. Essentially, though, in this particular instance, they've made a lot of progress really quickly. And the President of the United States has petitioned the Supreme Court, along with, again, several others in his administration, to step in because this Historical Preservation Society says that Trump doesn't have any authority to knock down, again, not the White House. When you're thinking of the White House, like all of the pictures that you've ever seen, the East Wing is like way off to the side. There's this little goofy hallway and then a bunch of crappy, moldy office cubicles. When you go on a tour of the White House, that's not the part you're in. I've been in the East Wing. It sucks. But even again, just my subjective opinion of the White House doesn't necessarily matter here. The Historical Preservation Society, though, says that if before Trump sneezes and blows his nose, he has to consult Congress for it. And the way the law reads, Congress really is saying only if the President of the United States is seeking funds from the power of purse from Congress. It's not some national, the East Wing isn't a national park. Like, I'm going to tear down Yosemite and put a ballroom with a fountain right over Old Faithful. Like, that's not what happened. So anywho, this is where things get a little bit interesting. The reason the Supreme Court, through Chief Justice John Roberts, made the decision to issue this stay, like this temporary little brief order, it appears that there is a Supreme Court justice when all of the other justices, including the liberals, except for one, decided, yeah, the president has the authority to keep doing this. And also, and I told you this on the show earlier this week, for those of you who are coming back for another round or another dose, John Roberts has one extremely predictable trait. The man gets annoyed very, very easily. And a lot of people, most of them on the left, some of them on the right, they won't stop poking him. They won't stop. They keep going up to John Roberts and they're saying, hey, you got to do this. You got to stop this. He gets annoyed and eventually he just says, screw it, and often ends up siding with Trump. Well, all of the Supreme Court justices, save for one, appear to be in a position where they were going to rule in favor of the Trump administration here. However, now it appears there is one justice, oh gee, I wonder which crayon-wielding justice this might be, is going to write their own little opinion and likely a dissent, as Alex Martin, a legal analyst over on X, points out. An administrative stay from, again, the COA expiring today, this appears kind of to be some kind of temporary stall tactic. Admin stays are not usually an indication on how the court is feeling on a case. Normally, they're just issued at the beginning of a schedule, but this is issued after. So the Supreme Court's already made up their mind here, essentially. And so if they're coming up and they're saying, no, you don't get to do anything until essentially Ketanji Brown Jackson learns how to fold a piece of paper in half and then file it like an office memo, that's what the end of this will be. So again, the legal analysis there is not directly from yours truly. That's from, again, on X, Alex Martin. And I'd say that's a pretty good guess. A very, very good guess. Now, the reaction is what you might expect. Anger and outrage and not knowing how to read. So Chuck Schumer, I've been told when I do an impression of him, I have to bring the glasses down. The MAGA Supreme Court is rubber stamping Trump's vanity-driven, gilded corruption. As costs skyrocket, the administration is wasting money on an endless and illegal war, corporate giveaways, and Trump's pet projects. Okay, so again, as a quick reminder to you and everyone at home, the White House ballroom, like the actual ballroom part, not the military renovations to the presidential bunker, and not the anti-air and drone defenses, which, by the way, were recommended by Democrat senators to the Biden White House. Like those kind of upgrades, those two things, the bunker, again, I think the president should probably feel a little safe in the White House. Yeah, just kind of a fair point there. And then also anti-air and drone defenses, because we're in a new world. New things need to be put to make sure the president is secure. Also, the president should probably be able to land on top of the White House instead of in front of the White House, those kinds of things. Those like various little bits and pieces in the construction facet, those are handled by the taxpayer and have really already been set aside for. The ballroom itself, like the ballroom portion, is being funded by the president and donors to the building. You're not paying for that. And you say, well, what about the windows? Well, okay, if it is a part of the security, in this case, that has to be a very specific kind of bulletproof glass that's not publicly available in its recipe so that, I don't know, someone figures out a way to break it easier. At least that's the argument that was given to me from an insider over at the White House. Nothing special there. It was really just me asking some press questions about how these things are going. That seems to be the president of the United States so far, and the anger at this is all just cheap, silly, goofy outrage. Now, I do enjoy, speaking of these kinds of outrage, I do like watching various networks. So, for example, the CNN report today, making it clear, yes, it just so happens that the president is getting a victory today. And he is. This is a victory for the administration.
Breaking news, another win for President Trump and his controversial ballroom construction project at the White House. CNN's Kevin Liptak joining us now with the very latest. So what did the Supreme Court say here?
Right, and this is a victory, albeit a temporary one. Remember,
the reason that the temporary here stays issued after the fact are very, very rare. Not just like a temporary hang on there but until the case is over.
Two lower courts had ruled that the president's construction of the ballroom was illegal because he hadn't gone to Congress, and they had ordered it to stop. But they had been given this 2-week grace period in order for the Supreme Court to intervene. Now, the Supreme Court has said now that the construction can continue, but they did not rule on the legality of the project. They're simply allowing the construction to continue as they continue to deliberate. And so
okay, so the Supreme Court is not actually sitting in a room and like deliberating and arguing over it. The reason is particularly this. You can see, again, if you're watching the live stream or you're watching our syndication via one of our TV partners, that is currently the status of the White House. I mean, we've actually got walls going up over on the East Wing. It's going up pretty quickly. It's not finished. The average American, the common sense person, whether you agree or you disagree with, for example, here in Indiana, which is where I'm broadcasting the show from, though a lot of my colleagues and partners are in DC, they decided a couple of years ago to completely rip out the interstates in the very, very, very center of Indianapolis. And it was really, really annoying. And even after several years of the construction being ridiculous, a lot of people still wanted the construction to continue once it had started. Why? Because the alternative is just leaving it there as a mess. You think the Supreme Court's going to go, nope, sorry, the White House has to look like that forever? Yeah, guys, that's not happening. No matter how badly there are those out there that are making a huge to-do about this, that ain't happening. It ain't happening. Radio crew, we'll send you guys over to the commercial break. We're going to talk about the actual broader context here. Besides just the White House, the way the Supreme Court's moving here does actually have some pretty significant implications. And yeah, it's got to do with you. See you guys after your commercial break. We'll continue on the live stream. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. Now, here's what this has to do with you. The Supreme Court of the United States, by issuing this little temporary stay here, which again appears to be because there is one justice, not two, not three, not five, getting into the dissent opinion category, but one, means that 8 out of 9 justices really appear at this point to understand, yeah, the president has the right to do this. And if you've got Sonia Sotomayor that's kind of leaning that way, that says a lot about the current state of the Supreme Court and the way the laws of the United States are set up with several other executive orders. Because if the president of the United States can raise money and then simply manage things under his control, then that means there are going to be some things, some mechanisms that the administration has set forward since it began, Trump 2, that are going to be pretty effective. One of these is the presidential administration's ruling on the Office of Management and Budget. Now, I know. Very, very exciting, sexy stuff. There was a ruling today in the D.C. Circuit Court by Chief Judge Srinivasan. Can't we just do normal name? Anyway, this particular judge vacated a earlier district court preliminary injunction that had tried to block the Trump administration from temporarily freezing some funding to federal agencies, like certain grants, loans, and assistance. The DC court ruled today, the Trump administration does have the right every once in a while to go in and do a lot of firings of federal workers. He has the authority to tell different agencies not to use money, even though it's there, even though Congress said, hey, here's all of this money. If the president of the United States wants to kick in the door and say, no more money to lesbian, transgender children in Luxembourg. You don't have to use that money, just leave it sitting on the kitchen table. Then the president has the authority to do that. Now, why does that matter here? And again, with the Supreme Court making these kind of leanings in this way, the president has a current outstanding executive order on the United States Postal Service. What does this have to do with? Mail-in ballots. And unlike the Save America Act, which even if it were passed a month ago, would not have any impact on this next election, the executive order on the Postal Service does. Because the USPS answers to the Postmaster General, who answers to the President of the United States. And all of these various states and commonwealths that use mail-in ballot procedures have gotten rather willy and or nilly with some of their rules for mail-in voting over the last couple of years and decades. And so the president issued a series of guidances to the USPS, which does in fact answer to him, to tighten some of those things up. And all of these blue states then sued the Trump administration and said, you can't just like track ballots in the mail. It's horrible. It's evil. It's trying to control the elections. That kind of a thing. Yeah, I hate to be the one to be the bearer of bad news here, which is another way of saying I really love being the bearer of bad news here for some of you. The Supreme Court, again, unless I see the framework, kind of the Inspector General's argument before SCOTUS change, there's a pretty good opportunity for SCOTUS. Yeah, I mean, it really appears right now that they're going to rule on behalf of the Trump administration regarding the Postal Service, which means that the midterm elections are going to be very, very, very different. Now, last but not least, this brings us over to just one final little extra decision. In a 2-1 decision today, the Second Circuit in Manhattan blocked the Department of Justice from issuing subpoenas issued to New York Attorney General Letitia James' office. So, as a reminder, the Trump administration sought various kinds of records, both on Letitia James' business dealings, as well as how they carried out their investigation into President Trump. Because splitting like one questionable felony charge that wasn't charged at the federal level, and then bringing it down to the state and splitting it 25 different ways, carries with it some questions and issues and all of that stuff. So, what do? They said, actually, Mr. President, you can't. You have to stop subpoenaing this office in New York. Why? Well, radio crew, welcome back from your commercial break. The majority of this particular panel, a 2-1 decision, says that the Trump administration lacked lawful authority as the acting U.S. attorney under the Federal Vacancies Reform Act, meaning that President Trump put in a U.S. attorney into that particular district and then filed for those records. They said, actually, this guy's illegitimate. The issue here would be Senate Majority Leader John Thune. So if you really wanted to know the first big sin for a lot of the Republican Senate on their beautiful little sort of temporary kind of almost a recess, there are still a ton of vacancies in federal courts. There's a ton of vacancies in U.S. attorneys' offices. There's still a ton of vacancies in administrative positions that the Senate has not pushed through and gotten done. If they went to a true recess right here and right now, the presidential administration could do recess appointments like every other major administration before him. And so the reason you're seeing some judges try to throw a wrench into the gear shift here really just has to do with the fact that the Senate's not doing their job. Now, that's enough court news. I know it's not really exciting. What does this mean for the rest of the country? It means two things. How are voters seeing it on the right? How are voters seeing it on the left? Because Republicans in Congress really aren't doing a whole lot at the moment. They're running for office. And then over on the left, they're trying to make some arguments as to why we should care. The leftist argument is entirely based on destroy the Supreme Court and maybe you'll get some universal health care out of it. For example, Democrat Randy Villegas in California, running for California's 22nd, he makes this exact socialist argument.
I've heard of a lot of different ideas talked about, in terms of leaders, and we can look to roughly 100 years ago when FDR stared the Supreme Court down as he tried to push for New Deal policies, and they blinked, right? And I think we're in a moment where we need to use every tool possible. What does that actually look like? Congress actually has the power to expand or shrink the court. Personally, I believe that we need term limits for U.S. Supreme Court justices, and that is something that I will support in Congress.
All right. So again, running on this, we're just going to tear it all down thing. Yeah, I'm not quite seeing how this is going to make a huge amount of waves. But again, we've talked about the socialists a lot this week. We've talked about a lot of the idiots and what it is that they're pitching to the American people. In the meantime, the Trump administration is trying to get a couple of things through. So you may we may have talked about this kind of thing this week, that the price of goods, groceries in this country, it's not exactly super popular. It's not exactly a wonderful thing right now in the economy that, for example, if you go to the grocery store and you try to buy a pound of beef, it costs you close to a mortgage. So what is it that you do here? What is it that you actually can do to take steps as the Trump administration to lower the cost of beef? Because again, I talked about this earlier this week. The president can't simply snap his fingers and say, let there be cows. And that's kind of an issue because beef production in this country, it's a cyclical industry for ranchers. And if the price of beef is increased, some of it due to regulation, most of it, though, just due to a very severe cattle shortage, and then the price of grain and feed, and a little bit of that as well, then what does the president have as an opportunity? Because the prices are upsetting Americans right here and right now. Well, the president of the United States announced that he would be concluding a deal, quote, to substantially lower the price of ground beef for working American families. I think the White House also took the statement and put it up. He says, everyone knows under President Biden, beef prices soared at their fastest rate, and the American beef herd fell to its smallest size in modern history. As we work to rebuild this herd and help our ranchers, for the next 90 days, the United States will allow up to 300,000 metric tons of product for ground beef to be imported with no out-of-quota tariff. We have a commitment that this beef will be sold at 25% below current market prices. The deal will reduce prices for Americans while giving space for a great American beef herd to grow again. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Now here's the rough part of this for a lot of people, because there are a lot of people who are very outraged and angry. Like Thomas Massey is really angry that the president did this, which is kind of funny. You would think that this quote unquote supposed libertarian would actually support like free international trade and like actually importing and selling and exchanging of goods. But Thomas Massey's kind of a clown. By the way, he does say this is worse than socialism. So quite the decision there. I will say this. It is a 90-day temporary reprieve. This is the what I would say the almost the equivalent to opening up the strategic petroleum reserves, but for beef. We're opening up the strategic beef reserves, meaning that the United States is going to import some beef for 90 days. Gee, I wonder what's in 90 days to reduce the strain on the economy. It is. That's the president's plan, clear and simple. 90 days is not going to 90 days of undercutting ground beef that is currently $7, $8, $9, $10, $11, $12 per pound of ground beef, because again, there's just not a lot of cows. That's not going to kill ranchers. That's not going to take all of the ranchers out back and shoot them. That's not how that works. I understand a lot of people are upset about this. I do. I hear you. Again, we have Well Done Beef in Greenfield, Indiana, which is the sponsor of the show. They provided us a lot of beef before. I want them to be very well taken care of because they are local American farmers. They produce excellent cattle. They can't snap their fingers and make cows grow. And again, they have to, of course, set market prices based on the expenses and availability of certain goods and what it is that things cost. But yeah, I mean, to recover from certain policies in the past, making some temporary deals, the president is doing the exact same thing right now with tariffs between the United States and Canada. We just talked about this earlier. I'm sorry that a lot of the show today is we've talked about this already, but there are a lot of people that are yelling about the ballroom, that are yelling about tariffs, that are yelling about beef, that are yelling about immigration, that are yelling about ICE, that are yelling about the Washington, D.C. crime rates, that are yelling about data centers. Guys, down just a bit. Not y'all, not those in the comments section, because, you guys are excellent folk. But a lot of my colleagues that are staffers in DC or in the media, they've spent this week doing a lot of yelling and yodeling. It sounds like a lot of geese, to be clear. What the president of the United States is doing here is a temporary reprieve measure. That's kind of it. It's to try to help certain things. Now, by the way, I do want to point out in the meantime, and I don't have some of the clips ready. This is rather spontaneously popping into my mind. There has been increased outrage from Americans from certain big box stores. So not to name guilty names, but Walmart, that has been caught consistently over the last couple of weeks saying, oh, this is a pound of ground beef. This is a pound of bacon. And then when individuals actually take the ground beef or take the bacon or take meats at the supermarket and weigh the amount of ground beef they're being given, it's 0.7 pounds, 0.8 pounds. Oh, it's just 12 ounces. Gee, I guess it just must have been a mistake. And as you might guess, all of the mistakes, the accidental, not quite the weight you're paying for system, well, I mean, it always seems to favor one direction. You never get more beef than what you're paying for example. So the president's administration has begun a series of investigations into some of the providers, all the way over from some of the gasoline, the corporate industries, in fuel production and transport, all the way over to grocery stores and major chains. And I've heard some of the criticisms out there from some of my very, very, very to the ultra free market crew on the right who is upset about this and say it's a waste of time and it's kind of socialist. No, it's not. It is not. We should be more than willing in this country to investigate those who are violating their state's Bureau of Weights and Measures, which, by the way, your state likely has a Bureau or a Department of Weights and Measures. It is illegal for a state to sell you an advertised product as being a pound of something and then to sell you less of that. That's not allowed. So the president getting a lot of backlash here and now for this beef plan. Marjorie Taylor Greene is suggesting the reason that beef is really expensive right now is because of the high cost of fertilizer and diesel. No. Is fertilizer expensive right now? Absolutely. Because again, a lot of the fertilizer, petroleum-based products out of the Middle East, they'd slow down, had to find alternative routes. Is certain aspect of grain farming and transportation right now expensive? Yeah. Does some of that have to do with some of the Middle Eastern stuff? Absolutely. It does. Is that what's driving ground beef up right now? No. Basic reading, boys and girls. It's a thing. Also, Marjorie Taylor Greene is, she's a little something special. Radio crew, we'll see you guys on the other side of your commercial break. There's more here on the Tony Kinnett Cast on the live stream in the meantime. From Carol Hutch, I see a YouTube member question that I just happened to look over at. Says, hey, why are we importing fertilizer? Well, fertilizer requires a lot of things that are kind of hard to just kind of make right here and now. Fertilizer production requires things that the United States doesn't just have. And, well, I probably shouldn't say that because whenever someone says the U.S. has a low amount of something, a farmer in the middle of bleeping nowhere discovers the biggest supply of it in the world in about 2 weeks. But the United States, there are different types of crude oil. So like Texas tea is very, very different than what comes out of the ground in Alberta, very different than what comes out of the ground in Venezuela, very different than what comes out of the ground in Iraq, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and certain types of oil are better for making certain types of things. Just like my dear bakers, certain kinds of flour is much easier to create into breads, cakes, pies, bagels, Butterfingers, what have you. I guess flour doesn't go into Butterfingers. Ignore that I said that. Let's say shortcake. I don't know. All right. In the meantime, the president of the United States is also doing something that is honestly rather great. Yeah, that's right. As far as executive orders go, right now, right here, the President of the United States has issued a brand new series of orders to federal agencies supporting 1,000 plus rocket launches and reentries by 2030. Or excuse me, I was wrong. 1,000 plus rocket launches and reentries per year by the year 2030. Nearly 3 per day. And this, again, comes as the United States races to outpace China in deploying satellites for GPS, military communication, weather forecast, internet access, those kinds of things. And yeah, that's a good thing. Right when Trump announced his run for this term, 2020, end of 2023, right before 2024, I made the case that, or was this be 2022 into 2023? I made the case that the President of the United States' best moment of a really, really, really long speech on why he was running for office again and that kind of a thing was because he said that we were going to be the first country to go to Mars, and he once again cast America's vision to the heaven. The reason this is a good thing from an administrative perspective, the American economy needs somewhere to go. The American people need somewhere to pioneer. As long as the American people are moving, as long as the American people are pushing forward, they succeed. When the American people become stagnant and we're not conquering new lands or creating new things, when we're not actually developing a place for people to leave their home and go, the American dream is very Abrahamic. It is to go and to experience an adventure. It's really not to sit there and stay and be European. The founding fathers were kind of, rather, they didn't care for that as much. But the American pursuit and expansion, that needs to be either towards Alaska, our earlier foreign possessions, or space. Space is a good place to expand to. And so the President of the United States doing this, especially in a way that kind of flips off China, that's a very excellent thing. Now, the last thing the Trump administration is doing right here and right now, that again, might I argue, is rather effective. The United States, through the presidential administration, is effectively, right before the midterms, putting out some pretty decent numbers on illegal immigration, on preventing more migrants arriving into the country, on removing migrants, and not just those who are here illegally in the traditional snuck in kind of way, but also those who are here on temporary protected status or those who have lied on their visas, that kind of a thing. So first of all, Secretary Markwayne Mullin of Homeland Security talking about it has now been 16 straight months with 0 illegal immigrants released into the country. Not a bad thing.
Underneath President Trump's leadership, we're almost at 16 months with 0 illegals released into this country. And by the way, these same authorities that the president has used to secure our border, President Biden could have done the same thing, but he chose not to. And so every single death. So when you said a while ago that the blood is on their hands, you're absolutely correct, Sean, because every single death that has occurred by an illegal that was released into this country underneath the Biden administration, every one of those is 100% preventable.
Radio crew, welcome back from the commercial break. There's a very weird idea prevailing in the country right now that the Trump administration needs to, go through all of these little check boxes and listen how to talk to voters. Now, so far for the show tonight, as kind of far as a core theme goes, it has been a full week of yelling. A lot of yelling on all sides, online, on TV, in the radio, in person, all of it. And it has been a whole buffet of screeching about what people need to say. So on the left, you've heard a lot of the socialists, and we'll get to those, who have said you need to start talking about getting rid of the Supreme Court. You need to start talking about getting rid of immigration customs enforcement, ICE. You need to talk about getting rid of prisons. You need to talk about getting rid of the Senate, getting rid of the Electoral College. And then the corporatist side of the Democrat Party saying you need to talk about how you're going to protect gender surgeries for minors, whether that's Senator Ed Markey in Massachusetts or Representative Moulton, the goober over on that East Coast side running for Senate also in Massachusetts. That's the left side of the screeching. And on the right, you've heard a lot of the Trump administration needs to start talking about ICE and be a lot kinder and sweeter and gentle. Otherwise, people are going to leave the big tent. Or the Trump administration needs to be a whole lot rougher and tougher. And I'm here to share that the Trump administration is actually doing a fair amount of things that people are asking them to do. What I seem to be noticing here on the Tony Kinnett Cast at the Daily Signal is that there is a lot of ignoring when things are being done. and just yelling anyway. It's really bizarre. And again, I'm more than happy to call out when this administration isn't doing things. More than happy to do so. But right now, as far as illegal immigration is concerned in this country, the Trump administration is not doing as terrible of a job as some are screeching. Oh, Obama even deported more people than President Trump. No. So this particular chart here, this is from an X account user named Smerkley, who does a ton of data analysis, makes a lot of charts. And if you're the kind of person that really enjoys sitting down and looking at graphs, first of all, you're a nerd. Number two, he's probably your guy. So removal orders versus relief by term, meaning that on average per month, how many individuals in this country who are illegal or who violated visa, who broke some kind of a rule, are being told by a judge, meaning this has to be prosecuted, the Department of Justice, the Department of Homeland Security has to request and say, hey, this guy, he's been here way too long. Give him an order of removal and tell him to get out of here. That actually just so happens to be things that the Trump administration's kind of excelled on. Whereas in Obama's first administration, you averaged about 12,800 of those removal orders per month. Obama 2, 7,700. The first Trump administration, 1,300. Biden 1, 17,500. Trump 2, there have been an average of 56,575 removal orders. And then those people pick up their bags and leave the country per month. That's pretty good. That is pretty good. One of the reasons why the Trump administration has been successful on this is that they have said, hey, it is far better for you to leave on your own before we catch you. And you know what? That worked. It worked. Now, again, is it a total, amazing, everything's mass deportation, everything's been cleared out and decluttered out? No. But there are a couple of things here that we're seeing that are moving on some of the things that people voted for. Now, on the flip side, what you have is the kind of denying reality moving into the midterms. And the left is really, really working hard on this one. So we've now gone back to there is no crime from illegals at all. Illegal immigrants, they don't commit any crimes, ever. You're all super duper safe. In fact, it's probably the Jews or Israel. Israel's doing it. Yeah, if anything at all. Very, very spooky. So in this case, Hassan Piker, again, the guy that the left has decided to make their latest Joe Rogan, the 9/11 defender himself, in a little, hangout session with Abdullah El-Sayed, again, running in a very tight race in Michigan, he says there's no undocumented migrant crime at all. It's not even a thing. It's just a figment of your imagination. Incredible.
There is no undocumented migrant crime. Yep. That's like not a real, that is in the margins. That's not a real problem for Americans.
It's in the margins. It's just, wow. I mean, again, I can't really find any of these people that are willing to walk through one of these heavy migrant areas at night. They won't do it. Why not? What's the problem? What are you scared of? But of course, there are just so many various examples. Today alone, this report over from the Department of Homeland Security convicted Jose Avelar Velasquez, criminal illegal alien from El Salvador, convicted for murder in Riverhead, New York. Also today, Noel Escarcega Ortiz, an illegal criminal alien from Mexico, convicted for second-degree murder in Minneapolis, Minnesota. There's just case after case after case after case every day. More charges, arrests, convictions, removals, and so on. So the Trump administration saying, hey, we're trying to do the stuff. Things are a lot safer. We're not there yet. It's not perfect, but we're working on it. Whether that's with beef, whether that's with illegal immigrants, whether that's with advancing in the American economy and pushing forward, making some ground up. That's not a bad argument in the midterms. Is it the world's greatest argument? It's better than ever? No, it's not. But it is a way better argument than whistling past the graveyard and saying, cover your eyes, everything is fine. And the Trump administration has done nothing at all. Yeah, I don't think that's gonna be the move. Again, with those on the left trying to go all out, suggesting that Americans don't matter, and instead illegal immigrants need all of the resources all the time. Senator Adam Schiff, old pencil neck himself, quote, having access to legal counsel during immigration proceedings is essential to fair outcomes, yet beyond the reach of many. I'm leading a bill to ensure that families have a fighting chance to present their cases and achieve fair results in the courts. Schiff is mad that you're not paying for illegal immigrants' lawyers. Yep, that's it. Democrats are now saying, not only do you need to pay for their Medicare, not only, which, oh, again, you were told they're not on, but as, Senator Ed Markey and other Democrat senators have recently pointed out, they're terrified ICE is going to look at the records of Medicare and Medicaid, which is rather strange, rather curious, for sure. Again, the Trump administration right here, right now, just weird and bizarre arguments against them that I'm not quite understanding. Coming out and saying everything's fine, and also you need to be paying more money, in this case for illegal immigrants' lawyers. Yeah, I don't know, man. As one comment points out, yeah, I'm seeing a lot of non-citizens, I've seen a lot of non-citizens getting treated like kings. So what I'm seeing here is the Trump administration create a list of things that they've actually done pretty successfully so far. And then I'm seeing the left this week, and then also some other people doing a lot of yelling, suggesting that you need to be paying more, and also it's not happening, and it's good that it is. An interesting case, for sure. Also on the notable news side today, Aisha Wahab, we talked about her earlier this week as well, has won California's 14th district special election after Representative Eric Swalwell resigned for, groping and molesting his staff. She has become the very first Afghan American elected to Congress. Oh joy. Oh, that's the squeaky wheel that needed the grease. She defeated the more moderate Democrat Melissa Hernandez 53-47. And of course, she's got all of the craziest things, saying the exact same stuff. We got to get rid of the Supreme Court. We have to get rid of immigration customs enforcement. We have to get rid of all these other things. Bizarre. Now, on the Republican side of the aisle, in the campaigns for the midterm, where we are, I'm sorry to tell you I don't have a perfect record this week. Because on, Tuesday, I think I mentioned that in the middle of some really contested Senate elections, said Republicans kind of got to have their A game. Ken Paxton, he needs to step it up. Now, I know there was a picture of Ken Paxton at a WNBA game wearing the XXXY shirt like a week and a half after that news cycle ended. That's real special. It's really late, but okay, I guess that's better than doing nothing. Sure, great. I need you to try harder. Mike, Collins down in Georgia needs to do a little bit more, needs to try harder. In Michigan, Mike Rogers, he's doing okay. He can keep doing what he's doing for now. But there are a lot of really contested Senate elections. North Carolina, for example, Michael Whatley probably should be doing a lot better against Roy Cooper than he currently is. But in South Carolina, I really was not expecting some of the drama and the chaos right now inside the Republican Party to manifest the way that it has with Darlene Graham. So Darlene Graham, she is the sister of late Senator Lindsey Graham. And I got to say, guys, I wasn't expecting after on Tuesday where I had praised, again, the current senator of South Carolina that has been appointed to that seat. I wasn't expecting her, after making some pretty decent statements on ending the filibuster, to then turn around and kind of fall apart on the debate stage. And, well, it didn't go very well.
Senator, are Taiwan and the South China Sea national security issues for the United States? If so, why?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Are Taiwan and the South China Sea national security issues for the United States? And if so, why or how?
I'm just going to be honest here. I'm not on national security. I'm not that informed on national security, but I do support the military.
Yeah, that's not what you want in a debate. That ain't what you want. Radio crew, I will see you guys on the other side of your commercial break. We're going to continue here on the live stream. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Now, by the way, for you cool cats and kittens at home, in case you were wondering, what is it that she should have said there? She should have said, yeah, I think that destroying China if they attack Taiwan is a good thing. That's the answer. Seriously, that is the actual correct answer. Letting the United States get pushed around is never the correct answer. I don't know why a lot of people seem to struggle with that one. But anywho, she should have had an answer for it, of course. It's a little awkward. You're running for the Senate. Senate's a big boy, big girl position. It's kind of like, again, the Senate's an upper nobility class for Americans for some reason, because again, it's not elected by the state legislature. I know she's got a lot on her plate. And I know you have advisors and people around you. You don't know everything, and you stand on the shoulders of giants. We all do. However, probably should know enough about foreign policy to answer. There are two big foreign policy questions in the world. One is in the Middle East. The second one is with China. Everything else follows. Like, I don't need you to know where Aleppo is. I don't need you to be able to tell me how many times the French have screwed up something. I don't care about that. But things about China and things about the Middle East, yeah, you should probably be a little bit on the ball for that. Now, she did get roasted pretty quickly after, but she tried to downplay it on Hannity the next evening, which, fair, I understand.
I think you're 100% right, Sean. And, I tripped up on one question last night regarding Taiwan. But, I've said many times, I'm not a politician, certainly not a career politician. I don't speak politician. I was just honest, and I think that's kind of a foreign concept. But I talked to several people today. I traveled around the state, and they said, we appreciated the fact that you were honest. And
again, cool. Yes, same. I'm glad that she didn't just make something up. That's really cool. Because to be fair, that is what you would have AOC doing. Remember? AOC would start talking about how Venezuela is actually way south of the equator and that kind of a thing. Great. But you're also running for Senate. This is an issue that I have with quite a few people. Sorry, radio crew, I got to send you guys to the commercial break if I haven't already. I think I have. It's just, it's a day. Anyhow, on the side of the Darlene Graham case, I hear this from people all the time regarding a whole number of positions. Well, I mean, they're trying their best, and maybe they don't know everything about these various policies, but I mean, their heart's in the right place. You're running for office. You're running to be the senator from South Carolina. Now, she then says that she's more interested on local issues, this is usually where people kind of come in and try to clean up after it. Okay.
I did say several times that, China is our enemy, our military and economic threat to the United States. Of course, Taiwan is our friend. But I think people in South Carolina are more worried about making ends meet.
I agree. But the debate panel asked you a question. I hate this. I hate this so much. I've always hated it. I don't care what race it is. If I'm running for school board, and you ask me questions about how I feel about relevant cultural, political issues that are facing the teachers and students, even if the public may not like the answer, the people are owed an answer. If you're running for Senate, you're running for governor, you're running for mayor, and someone asks you about questions that you have said on your social media that you're talking about regarding the race, you owe them an answer. Don't go, well, actually, I don't think the issue is important at all. Again, some of you may know, South Carolina actually has a couple of important manufacturing deals and supply chain situations that involve Taiwan directly. Radio crew, welcome back from the commercial break. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. So I have an issue with this. I do. I don't like stuttering and kind of beating around the bush when it comes to Senate candidates. It's not fun. It's not a good idea. It's not a great way to win over voters.
They're concerned about boys and girls sports. One lady talked to me extensively about that today. They're concerned about the Second Amendment. They're concerned about the Save America Act, illegal immigration. So they're concerned about a lot of other things other than Taiwan.
Okay. Now, let's be very, very fair to Darlene here. And I agree. She said a lot of right things. It's not as though a senator's ability to answer a question yes or no on a certain issue is going to end the entire world as we know it. I'm not of that opinion. I'm not. And so far, from what I've seen in her voting and in her statements, she's done a pretty decent job. She has done a good job of carrying on Lindsay's legacy. Say what you will about the president saying that she should, carry on the torch there. That, in this case in point, really seems to be not really a bad thing. Not a huge issue for her. I don't. And by the way, the president also said something along these lines today, stepping off the plane before a rally.
For her, and it'll be very interesting.
Mr. President, Darlene Graham faced some criticism for her response at a debate earlier this week where she said national security is not her thing. Is that
well, no, all she was is being honest. She's very smart, and she was being honest. I mean, she's into the price of groceries, the price of food, the price of beef, and it hasn't been her thing. Okay,
not bad. All right, and then the last is just from Trump this evening.
The critic,
or excuse me, this is from Darlene Graham this evening. She's talking about the critics, those that are giving her a hard time over the issue.
The critics say I shouldn't run for the Senate. They say I'm not a politician. You know what I say? Guilty as charged.
Sure. It's very popular right now to say, well, I'm not a politician. Okay, again, sure. You are running for the Senate, though. Just say, look, I should have known a little more about it. I didn't know enough about it. I'll do some research. I'll do the homework. And then you should probably pawn it off and say, I mean, my opponent, he's for amnesty, and I sure as hell know South Carolinians ain't for that. That brings us over to Ralph Norman on the other side of it. The reason I'm pointing all of this out this evening, although it's kind of a low news day, I'm not complaining about that. It's like the first one we've had in 2 years. As far as Darlene is concerned, her opponent is not doing a whole lot better. So Ralph Norman, he's essentially saying, you know what? We need amnesty as long as they're here to work. Yeah, I don't think so.
Do you support the rights of those, and I've asked you this question somewhat before in a previous debate, but do you support the rights of those in the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, DACA, also migrants with valid visa status, green card holders, asylum seekers, naturalized citizens, and others who are legally going through the citizenship process? Do you believe in a pathway to citizenship for those folks?
Here's what I believe in: legal immigration, not illegal immigration.
Okay. This has been a thing that a lot of people have answered that question with for a long time now, and it's annoying. It's annoying. It's like, well, I'm for legal immigration, not illegal immigration. The issue with immigration in this country is that there are people who are coming here who are not assimilating to the country. I didn't say there are people who are coming here illegally. I didn't say there are people who are coming here legally. I said there are people who are coming here and who are not making an effort to learn the language, who are not making an effort to abide by its laws, who are still abiding by honor culture, who are not engaging with the American system, who are instead sitting on endless federal welfare. That's the issue. It doesn't have anything to do. Yes, of course, they're not following the law. Oh, okay, that's a big part of it, sure. They're not benefiting the country. The issue I have with someone coming here from Somalia is not whether or not they are black, whether or not they are Somalian, whether or not they can quote Captain Phillips, "I'm the captain now." My issue is not whether they come here legally under TPS, whether they applied, or whether they're illegal and they snuck in, or they were smuggled in, or human trafficked in, or they parachuted in with freaking MacGyver. My issue is when a girl walks down the street and that migrant passes her, does he leer at her and attempt to grope her? Does he murder a college student? Does he commit to cultural practices that involve sending money back to Somalia through wire fraud? Does he defraud Medicare and Medicaid? Is he going to bring 15 other people with him that are going to mooch off of federal welfare forever? That's my issue. Those things have nothing to do with the person's skin color or their, well, I can't say their religion entirely, how they act out their religion. It has to do with choices they have made and who they are on the inside. The content of their character, to quote a famous particular civil rights leader. I'm for legal immigration. I just, as long as they're here to work and the companies for the people that support me, I'm fine with it.
The president has got, we have to have a pathway, but you have to get the illegals out of the country now. You either
Okay, so the question that was asked as a quick reminder was DACA. People who were brought in as kids, they are illegals, they're not United States citizens, they were brought here, but they're kids. They're just kids. So don't they get in it? So so the way that he doesn't want people to call him mean. There was this old Republican establishment idea where they do not like it when there are headlines calling them mean and stinky. Now, the reason is because they do not have the cojones to simply respond, "I'm not mean, you're kind of an idiot." That's how you respond in that situation. To toot my own horn very briefly for a second here, when called a race baiter, the proper response is, "Excuse you, shut up, adults are speaking." Not immediately go, "Oh no, don't call me a race baiter. Oh my God, don't do that." No.
legal or you're not, and you get them out of the country. And then you have an expedited area for those workers who have been here and have not caused trouble and provide work and for different companies. You have.
Okay, so there are a couple of responses to this, by the way. Now, the reason is that there's a lot of there's a lot of low, skill labor jobs that don't really need this, it's so much easier to import a foreigner who's willing to do the job for $2 an hour than it is to abide by the current legal practices in the United States. Okay, let's take that there for a second. First of all, necessity is the mother of invention. Do you know what happens when you have people picking the crops? You don't innovate crop picking. Slavery in the United States just so happened to really, really wreck the progress of agricultural innovation while it was there. It was, again, that kind of not innovating, not taking on the Industrial Revolution would later kick the South's rear in the Civil War. That would be a huge issue there. Atlanta had a lot of reasons it could have grown just as easily as New York City did. It chose not to. Sorry, that's the actual historical data. And on the labor thing, by the way, we have learned 20, 30, 40 years ago, we were told, oh, we have to have all of this cheap labor. Who's going to pick the strawberries? Who's going to pick the tomatoes? What do we now have? Farm equipment that for the first time can automatically pick, without manual picking labor, pick some kinds of strawberries and tomatoes. Radio crew, I know it's been kind of a chaotic evening. We're going to continue on the live stream for just a hot second here, because this and data centers are the last little bit of yelling. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated, first on 93 WIBC. Now, again, the reason I'm talking about the Republicans debating here is that, sure, yeah, should Darlene have known the answer to the national security question? Yep. Her primary opponent, though, is doing the amnesty thing. Guess what? South Carolinian voters, those that I've spoken to so far, would rather have someone who occasionally gets a foreign policy multiple choice question wrong, that they can be coached by other staff in DC and institutes and think tanks. I'm very friendly with the Heritage Foundation. I rest assured someone from the Heritage Foundation will call her office and say, oh, hey, by the way, this is our kind of like, this is the history of the China thing. We can kind of walk you through it. There you go. You know, we'll go to a Panda Express. We'll order some General Tso's. It'll be a good time. Great. Or Beijing beef, as they call it over there. And whatever you got to do, homie. But as far as the amnesty thing, that's not something that can be cured with just a little tutoring session. Now, he was pushed back on this, and his answer kind of sucked.
Your opponent, after that debate, said you embraced amnesty for illegal immigrants.
Oh, I did not. What I said was that I would, if you're illegal, you're out of the country. You ought to.
He was asked about the DACA recipients who are in the country illegally. Step one would be answering, yes, I am for removing them. No, I am not for removing them. At the very least, here's what you do. You say they have to go out of the country and they have to get in the back of the line. That's an easy answer. He didn't give that answer, so he doesn't get to do this. But that's not the worst part of his response here.
Be deported. The president's doing it through ICE. He's getting the criminals out first. The media has stalled his actions because they're against the reason they brought the 20 million in here is to create a power base. He is dealing with it. No, if you're illegal, you leave. Now, what I did say is
the now functions as a but in this case.
The visas ought to be expedited so that workers, the farm people getting peaches out of the field for the farmers, those who are getting our commodity crops, and those who are doing construction have visas that they can work.
I hate this. And here's why. I am a huge fan of not a million bajillion different kinds of exceptions. I don't like this. I don't like this idea that, well, we really need crop pickers, so you know what we're going to do? We're just going to expedite everything. No. Bad. Don't do that. That is wrong. Expediting this, that, and the other. No. My dude, what you want is this thing called a crop picker visa. Make it a thing. Say, this is the crop picker visa, or this is the cleaning in hotels visa. As long as you're picking crops, as long as you're cleaning in hotels, this is the rules and whatever. If you want to pass that law, you advocate for it. Don't give me this, well, for picking the peaches and the picking the hotel, who's going to clean the bed, who's going to clean my office, to mow the lawn, and that kind of a thing. By the way, the answer to this question, people actually want to know what the answer is. So first of all, necessity is not only the mother of invention, necessity is the mother of innovation. There are a lot of organizations, businesses in this country. Corporate real estate is a phenomenal example of this, okay? So what did we find out during COVID? And all of these office buildings that people have been going to and sitting in cubicles and typing all day and then doing the commute home, we found out that we really didn't need them as much as don't take offense to this, my boomer audience, I love my boomers, but the kind of boomer-esque era of enshrining the suburb to office commute, because the greatest generation before them was kind of half and half on this, and then the office culture came out of like the rise of the baby boomers that cemented it into place. That's not an insult, that's just a little history lesson there. It's kind of phased out. So after the whole COVID system of nonsense and staying at home for no reason came down, we found out, wow, we don't really need all of this corporate real estate that's just sitting here for eternity and doing a whole lot of nothing. It turns out that a lot of those meetings really could be emails. And so corporate real estate now doesn't need the massive fleet of people maintaining some of these huge skyscrapers forever. That's just the truth, y'all. You don't need it. And the idea is, well, we have to think of all the people with the jobs and you got to have all of these things done, otherwise people aren't going to have a job. No, the same with hotels here. If hotels innovate, they can find ways to get around the I can't survive without slave labor issue. I hate this idea. I hate this. By the way, this is essentially Republicans' version of the women and black people are too stupid and poor to get voter ID. Republicans going, well, how are the businesses going to survive? They can't hire the slaves. We can't get the people to pick in the cotton. Oh my God. No. We don't have to rely on outdated systems that encourages and allows people in here who are going to violate that because they come from cultures where lying and mooching is a value, not an exception.
And go back. It wasn't a pathway. I think I said, my whole premise is, again, if you're illegal, you leave the country.
Wait a second. He finishes by saying, I didn't say a pathway. And then the clip he explicitly said the word pathway. There needs to be a pathway. Either stand for it or don't, Honcho. Don't be dumb is truly, of all things, the most basic of advice pieces here. Now, very quickly, before we get to the last two big things that people seem to be yelling about this week, that I can't help it. At the end of it, I just got to share it with y'all. Just it's eating up my heart, and I have to give it one last go. Before we do that, though, a moment for our sponsors, the Alliance Defending Freedom. It is, in fact, in today's day and age, really annoying and sometimes difficult to know what to say when the timeless truths that we all know are challenged. For example, like the simple definitions of the words like man and woman, things that confuse Senator Ed Markey of Massachusetts, and the WNBA. Gender ideologies permeated almost every area of public life, including your kids' schools, sports, medical ethics, religious freedom. And if you're not sure how to navigate all of that personally, not just on the national political scale, you're not alone. That's why the Alliance Defending Freedom has created a free 5-part video series to help you respond to the destructive lies of gender ideology with facts fortified by grace. You will hear from experienced attorneys on how this ideology is affecting the life and culture and how you can advocate for your beliefs and freedoms. It's a free 5-part video series. Highly recommend it. To get it, again, totally free, really useful. Go to joinadf.com/Tony and equip yourself to stand for truth with confidence and with clarity. All right. Last but certainly not least, there are two things that everyone is yelling about, and it's getting on my nerves. In fact, this entire segment, there's not going to be any glasses. I'm not going to need them. I'm just going to put them down because that's how annoyed I am with all of this. These two cases would be, number one, the federal case of Lindsay Clancy, and number two, the data center fight. So we're going to start with the data centers because this is probably a little bit easier to dive into. The last one is just really, really, really annoying. So everyone in the political landscape right now that I have seen talking about polling analysis heading into the midterms seems to be suggesting, and when I say everyone, I mean those who are kind of making trends of what's going to be the top 10 thing voters are going to go to the polls for. They're looking at a lot of Facebook posts and tweets and Instagram posts, such, on data centers. A lot of them, including those that are made with AI, that are anti-AI data center, which I find kind of funny. Those that are really pro it, those that are pushing just straight up lies about it for both the good and the bad. They're saying this is evidence people are going to come out and they're going to vote against or for data centers. They're going to come out to the midterms, y'all. This is going to be the issue of all time. Nope. No. Absolutely not. Not true. It's not going to be a thing. People like Abdullah Saeed, Bernie Sanders, they're all trying to run on this as hard as they can. And they are saying some of the dumbest things in the meantime. Now, we're going to get to the goodness or the badness of data centers here in a second. So hang on. First, we got to talk about people just being really dumb and retarded. So at the top of this list, David Hogg, who was vice president of the Democratic National Committee for all of about 3.5 minutes. He posted a tweet earlier this week saying, you know what, if data centers are so good and they make so many jobs, then, hey, here's a question. How come they're not building them in the richest zip codes in the country? And then he got royally pimp smacked because what's the county with the most data centers in the country? Loudoun County, Virginia, which is also the wealthiest county in the country. So again, if you're gonna get in on this, just saying really stupid stuff right out front, probably not the move. That's never stopped him before, though. Bernie Sanders did the exact same thing today. So Bernie Sanders, he's trying to be the Mr. Anti-Data Center. He knows all of the stuff. He's the things. He's going to do the stuff. Here you go. He says Trump thinks that every community in America should welcome a data center. Great idea. Lead by example. Have your friend Elon build one at Mar-a-Lago. Okay. So first of all, I hate the, well, if you're in support of it, then why don't you go off to more? Why don't you put one in your backyard? That's a dumb argument. That is, in fact, a very, very dumb argument. That doesn't make any sense. You as a citizen should have opinions on policy, economic, etc. Suggesting that if you don't have it in your backyard, then you're not allowed to support it is a little silly, personally. I mean, that's not exactly how policy works. But in this case, let's hear President Trump, because he does say that he thinks that, you know, if you're a mayor in a town or a city in this country, then you probably should consider having a data center because they're good for the economy. He didn't say put it right next to your house, like next door neighbor. But anyway, here is what the president did have to say about this. This is the clip that Bernie Sanders is quoting.
And I can say if I were the mayor of a town or the governor of a state and I had a chance to get a big plant in, an AI plant or a data center, I would absolutely want it because the jobs are enormous and the money paid, the taxes paid are just enormous. And if you don't take it, you're going to be left behind because there are plenty of places that want it. So I would say that maybe it can use a little public relations help.
Okay, so Bernie Sanders came in like, have Elon put one in Mar-a-Lago. Now, again, this kind of annoyed me. And the reason that this annoyed me is not, again, it has actually nothing to do with like the data center argument of the goodness and the badness and the jobness or the no jobs or the temporary, the permanent. There are currently roughly 12 existing data centers in Palm Beach County where Mar-a-Lago is located. Guys, boys and girls, pals, friends, you know, whatever. And you know, some of the people saying, well, Palm Beach County is really, really, really wide. Again, it is still, in fact, in his county. It's still there. And some of those data centers, by the way, just so happen to be in West Palm Beach, which is right next to the neighboring town where Mar-a-Lago is at. So, in fact, I believe one of the pieces of data here shows like within 2.5-3 miles of Mar-a-Lago, there's some kind of like a data center, like a data center building. So no, again, before you get out there and dive into this argument that everyone thinks is going to be the be all end all of the midterms, don't do this. Don't do this. Don't just make stuff up. Don't do that. And by the way, that goes the same kind of like on the other side of the aisle too. We're like, it's dirtying up the water. Oh, there's brown water coming out here in Jordan. No, that's not how water works. It's not how it works. It's not. Nope. If AOC shaking a jar of dirt water in Congress doesn't give you pause and think, maybe that's not a good argument. I don't know about that. Don't do it. Don't play that game. So that would be the first thing. Now, the president of the United States is rather in support of data centers as a whole. And a lot of people are weighing into this fight. Governor Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania has got out there and he's issued like a series of very strict requirements in the nation. He says, look, we're launching a new website where you can tell us about data center projects in your area and your concerns about them. Your feedback in person over text in my comment section. It helped inform the executive order I signed this week that will block bad projects if the local community doesn't want them. And your voice will help us stop bad faith developers who try to bully their way into blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. The issue for this, and this is something I do kind of giggle. This project of Josh Shapiro's is literally hosted in an Azure hyperscale data center. So there's the hypocrisy angle of it too. Again, if you're going to be like really against data centers, sharing AI generated posts, probably not making the argument that you're making. Now, there is an answer to this, believe it or not. There is a common sense, normal answer to the whole data center thing. Whether or not you're for or against them. Because we are currently not all cards on the table, and we should be. Because there's one side of the, for example, the conservative part of the country, there is one side of that party that is suggesting that we're in an AI race with China, which is true. We are in a tech race with China, which is true. And also, they are likely a part of the next industrial revolution, which is true. They've also said they do create jobs, which is mostly true. They don't create a ton of permanent jobs, for example. Like, and I've talked about this on the show before, like in a data center that's built, there may only be 14 to 17 permanent jobs there. That's based on again, some of the recent data filed and some of the permitting. Now, however, others have suggested that they are noisy and they're hot and they draw a lot of power. Some data centers are providing money and resource and infrastructure to build new power plants, which are lowering power bills in some areas. In some places, the data centers are not, and it is costing more. Both are true. It's the way, I'm sorry, both are true. And so when the president of the United States then makes a policy recommendation and everyone just immediately shuts their ears and either agrees with him or disagrees with him based on the headline instead of listening to the man, it gets kind of silly. Here's the clip that matters.
Well, the data center subject to me is a pretty simple one. If you pick the right location, and it's got to be, not every location is perfect.
So he says, if you pick the right location, you got to pick the right location. Guess what? If a local area of people doesn't want a data center right next to there, if you're the Development Economic Corporation of a state, let's say, and you want to shove it up the rear end of a local small town and they don't want it there, you're an a-hole and you deserve to be kicked out of office. It has nothing to do with it being a data center. It could be a power plant. It could be a waste treatment facility. I'll give you a great example of this. They're putting in some kind of like cattle processing fertilizer facility about 20 miles south of where I am, and it is ruining the entire area and their property values. Like the stench once that place is finished building. It's just going to destroy Shelbyville, Indiana. It's going to destroy it. It's going to be gone because of the reek that will go like for 10 miles out. If people don't want it right there, has nothing to do with the business. Has nothing to do at all. You know what? There are also a lot of people who really don't want a big, huge honkin' Holiday Inn Express right next to their house. It's true. So he's right there. So that's number one.
But you pick the right location. What it means for a community is jobs and lots of money and lower taxes.
Okay, what he said there, it means lots of money. That is true. It's true, guys. Money does in fact follow the data centers because a lot of the world, including the devices that you were using, the things that are in fact encoding this stream to you, are using those data centers. They're not just all AI image generation. That's not how it works. There is a lot of money that follows them. There are jobs that do follow them. Now, again, you have to weigh whether the data center going there is more important. Like, is the farmland there any good if it's going on farmland, or like what you have to weigh the pros and cons. But what he is also saying is correct.
And the data centers now are mandated by me that they build their own electricity, so they're not taking it from the grid.
Okay, that's the key. Power plant building in this country is something we are severely, severely lacking on. And by the way, how do I know that it's bad enough now that even the other side of the left side of the aisle is also starting to notice it? In New York, in the early 2020s, I think 2021, 2022, New York City and New York shut down a nuclear power plant for no bleeping reason at all. Kathy Hochul has now come groveling back to the state and said, hey, we probably need nuclear power, which the answer to that is absolutely you need it. All power, all the time, all of the switches on, except for windmills, because again, they cost more than they actually generate. But that is an important part of the country in the conversation. Now, I've seen the comments saying, well, the power grid is a mess and it needs to be overhauled. That's not a thing. That's not that. And I would like the moon to be over here instead of there. Okay, great. I mean, that to overhaul the power like grid infrastructure in this country, my brothers and sisters in Christ, we can't even agree to privatize part of Social Security so that it doesn't catch on fire and burn the economy down. So we're not going to be overhauling the power infrastructure, but we can reduce all of the regulations and put up a ton of power plants. We can. You can do that. Are some data centers doing that? Yes. Are some of them not doing that? Also, yes.
You were worry that
it's going to lower the electric cost because they're building electricity, and the extra, as an example, we talked about this once. I'm very proud of it. It was my idea. They're going to build their own electric producing facility.
Now, if that's part of the deal, if that's the deal, hey, you can build data centers here in this secluded area or whatever, but well, you're probably actually going to also need to build some power plants to, really generate a lot so that the power bill goes down in the area. Yeah, that would be good. Yep. Now, here's the real truth. You really want to know the actual answer to this? I'm going to give it to you. The issue right now is that a lot of these big tech companies haven't done any PR. That's kind of it. They haven't actually explained what the inside of the data centers look like. I'm going to do something that I really shouldn't do from a journalistic perspective. I have been trying to convince my bosses at the Daily Signal for the last couple of months to let me go and do a documentary in which I show up, in fact, as I talked to Nick about it, like Nick Shirley style, to a data center, and then in more of a How It's Made Discovery Channel style, walk through the data center and with a camera, show where the electricity is going, where the water is coming in, and if it's going out, how does stuff work here? Talk to the locals out there and see how much of the outrage at the data center is real, how much of it's fake. Actually go through and show the people of this country what is really going on in a data center. What does it really do? What does it not do? Now, if they have to blur part of something because it's proprietary, we should talk about it. Guys, that's the answer. I'm not joking. That's the answer. And the reason you're not supposed to mention this is because if you ever have an idea, you really want to hide it and keep it to yourself because you don't want someone to take the idea. I'm shocked no one has done something like this so far. In fact, OpenAI is that chat GPT. They have just now in Ohio hired a PR consultant because people are just mad. All of this could have been fixed by just simply explaining and being a lot more transparent about what this stuff is and how it works. Instead of just saying, you know what, you peons, we don't need, we're going to go to the development corporations of a state and they're just going to give us tax write-offs to put stuff in there. That is not how you do things. Not how you do things. And as a little side fact here, also back in the 40s, that is how Detroit got into some trouble with some of their people and how some of the manufacturing facilities were building as Detroit was spreading out. So again, those, for me, just for here, and by the way, for people saying, why didn't the Daily Signal documentary thing? The answer to that question is that I've asked several folks around certain data center projects, hey, can we come do an interview thing? And then the radio kind of goes silent. And also, I'm just telling you, I've asked the bosses. That's about all I can do from here, folks. I think it would be useful. I think it would be very, very helpful. Other than that, is this, even with all of this chaos and whatever, is this going to be the end of the debate and people are going to go swing midterms over this? No. This isn't going to this is not, we do this every midterm, y'all. We do this every midterm where people tell you and me and Kevin and Jeffrey and Steve and everybody, hey, this issue is going to drive all the voters to the polls. It's not. Two things are going to drive voters to the polls: the economy and the perception of the economy and the perception of safety and crime. Those are the two issues that are going to drive people. The rest of the stuff is frosting. Is data center, is that going to drive someone to go vote who wasn't going to vote? They're suddenly going to go vote for Abdul El-Sayed in Michigan? No, not going to happen. Now, on the last little part of this here, because there is just one little extra piece. The one thing that you don't need to do is be like the crew over at the Atlantic. By Emma Pearson. If you want to know what she looks like, picture an annoying blonde liberal woman in her late 20s. Early 30s, you got it. I'd rather risk cancer than see AI move this fast. I'd benefit if AI cured cancer, and I still want AI progress to slow down. Guys, AI has done more to detect cancer way earlier and prevent cases in which individuals are discovering they have stage 3, stage 4 cancers of almost every sort than any other discovery in human history. It's a good thing. It is. It's a good thing. Predictive analysis and then also looking over mapping, it's a good thing. Don't be that. Even if you want to like say, look, I'm okay with data centers. I just don't want them right next to my community. We can have that conversation. It's a good conversation. Or until they give me a little something, I don't want to give them a little something. Again, also a conversation we should have. Yep, good, awesome. But doing this kind of a thing right here, yeah, nope. Don't be retarded. Whatever that is, don't do that. Last but not least here for the show, the final little bit here involves the Lindsay Clancy case. Okay. There have been a lot of people on the right side of that. Remember last week when I did this on the stupid burritos? Okay. There have been a lot of people that have been yelling about the case of Lindsay Clancy, this mom who was put on a lot of like a lot of very, very dangerous medications, like 12 of them. And as a nurse, had easier access to get these medications, and whose husband was never really around during the raising of her kids, and who also suffered from postpartum psychosis, not postpartum depression, and strangled and slaughtered her 3 children. She has admitted in court she's guilty. There are a lot of people, however, who have taken this and decided to be really, really, really stupid. There are school martyring people on the right and on the left. There's like groups of women who are out, I guess, protesting for Lindsay Clancy in front of the court building. And there's Candace Owens. I don't think she did. That's not what annoys me the most. What annoys me the most is that there are now a group of people that are suggesting this is going to be the thing that drives women to vote against Republicans in the midterms, because people like Matt Walsh over at the Daily Wire, who says really, really spicy things, and sometimes he just says the thing that's the edgiest, I suspect, to get a reaction, because, guilty of his charge of doing that myself at times. He suggested that like essentially all women who ever have any kind of depression regarding, like, oh, that's because they're selfish. And there are people that have come out and decided to make the case that it is Matt Walsh that is going to turn all women against the Republican Party, because there are a lot of women who have very stupidly come out and said, I'm just like Lindsay Clancy, which is also retarded. No. No one is going to, there's not a huge group of independent women in the country who are now being turned off, and they're not going to come out and vote. They're going to come out and vote for Democrats because people have said that you shouldn't kill your kids. That's not a thing. That's not a thing, guys. And yeah, by the way, was she mentally ill? Yeah. But by the way, just as a side note here, if a veteran with PTSD goes and kills 13 people in a shooting, you know who still gets convicted and sentenced? The veteran with PTSD. We're going to do the equal. All right, I wasn't really going to do this, but I saw a comment, and that was a mistake. Fine. Here's my take on the Lindsay Clancy case. If you're going to have the equal rights thing, if we're going to do we're just the same and everybody's the same, you got to play by the same rules. If a man goes on a mentally ill break and kills people, he still gets like the book thrown at him. This isn't Batman where like all of the crazy people go off to Arkham Asylum. That's not a thing. And in the case of the ladies here, if you're going to play by this game, yeah. And by the way, should the husband have been at home more? Yeah. As a nurse, should she not have sought a bunch of medications and stuff to be on? Sure. Does that exonerate her from killing her kids? No. That's my take. There you go. Like, everyone's to blame. I don't like anyone in this case. The whole case is just full of retarded people, and innocent children died because of it. I hate that. However, the argument that how you talk about this and people arguing about it on Twitter X and Instagram is going to suddenly sway people in elections is also very stupid. It's also dumb. All of it's very, very dumb. At the end of a long week, people yelling, there's some good stuff. The good stuff is that the people yelling really don't affect you. They don't. The people yelling isn't going to fix the flooding in central Indiana or the wildfires out west and up north, or the storms that have now hit out east. The wild yelling isn't going to make cows spring out of the ground. The wild yelling isn't going to suddenly make an AI data center 1984 from George Orwell, or the second coming of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and the wonders and the grace and the glory. Neither of those is true. All of the yelling, it's not making the impact that a lot of my colleagues online think it's making. And that's encouraging. Now, to some of my people who think that the moon and the sun rise and set with their opinions, that's probably upsetting for them. But for me, nah. It's all right to have a Friday where the only big news is that a lot of people are kind of yelling hot air. I think we can leave it there. Have a really great weekend. We'll cover the advanced speech from Ohio on Monday. A lot of things I want to listen to there first. There's some other big details coming out as well from the Middle East over to, believe it or not, a very bizarre update in the Ukraine-Russia thing. But it's not done yet. And then the economic and the other stuff. We'll get to that Monday. Have a wonderful weekend. Go touch some grass. Spend time with your family. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. Y'all, take care.
Every state is home to significant historic sites that tell the American story. But not every site is telling that story honestly and fairly. That's why the Heritage Foundation created the Heritage Guide to Historic Sites. This interactive guide equips American citizens with the tools they need to enjoy the sites that depict some of the greatest moments in our nation's history, analyzing them for historical accuracy, and provides resources for families or educators planning a visit. From Mount Vernon to Independence Hall to Gettysburg and more, Americans deserve transparency, and sites that steward our history faithfully deserve our gratitude. The Heritage Guide to Historic Sites invites every American to rediscover the places and stories that define our nation, whether it's across the country or in your backyard. Visit historicsites.heritage.org to start your adventure today.